Hi, my name is Tina Lopez, and I'd love to be considered as a contract role specifically for the content marketing manager position at your company. Now, I did take a look at this job description, and it really looks like we want to ship content at volume, but I think we could do a really good job and see if we can create systems or automations or agents to execute a large chunk of the work, especially if we want to get everything out there on time, on schedule, and in pristine condition. So, the way that I see this is like right now you have a pipeline of ideas and you want to turn it into actual published work that lives almost everywhere, right? And so, the way that I kind of break this down when it comes to content is I think of this as like the first step of having an intake process. And then, once when we have intake, we're going to go into creation. Could we create a set of agents to create the content from the intake? And then we want distribution. Distribution becomes so important because it's the way that your content gets seen, right? And so when I think about what this actually looks like in terms of a process, right? Your intake could be a couple different things, right? One, you have, I assume, maybe an agency that you work with to take some content pieces. You have research. If you also want to, bring in the founder, you have founder led content. These are all what I would describe data sources of maybe where origination of ideas or content could exist or does exist, right? We put that content into a database, and I recommend a tool like Airtable as an example. And that database will house every single piece of content in there. Think of this as like your content source of truth. And then once when it gets dropped in there, we can create a couple of automations where like if the agency sends it to a specific email, it automatically gets sent to that database. Same thing with your research team and same thing with your founder as an example. Gets logged into this database. And then maybe we can automatically send it to a first round of edits with our editing agent, right? And that editing agent can do two things. Either it can give it feedback based on, what is the quality standards that you have for your content, and then take that feedback and then send it to the originator, the person who actually submitted the content. Or the other side of it is like if the content's good and there's no need for feedback, then it could proceed and go down the creation route. And with the creation route, what this does is it takes the intake, so it takes this database, or sorry, it takes the content that preceded and from the intake process, and then we can repurpose it. We can create, take the final content that we have proceeded and improved, and then create blog articles. We can leverage SEO skills to make sure that our blogs are actually, hitting all the marks of what becomes good content. We can actually, repurpose that content to social media platforms. You can purpose this content into case studies, things of that sort. It really becomes to, when it comes to creation, it comes to determining what are the formats that you want, what are the outcomes that you're looking for, that, and then creating the set of agents that can do every single step more than anything. And then once when we actually get that final piece of where like the content is ready, then we can send it to a distribution agent. And I think it's important to put it to a distribution agent for a couple reasons. One, a distribution agent works better than a scheduler because a distribution agent can probably analyze like what are the best posting times and then make sure to schedule to each specific platform based on those posting times. And on top of that, this distribution agent can also make sure to resize everything based on the aspect ratios of what are the requirements of every specific platform, right? And so what this does is it takes, what we've created here, and then it can repurpose it or distribute it to your website. It could distribute it to social medias, optimize it based on the per platform that we are actually posting it on. And then, in my personal opinion, content should serve a purpose. So the call to action could, in your case, either be book a call, or maybe if you wanted to create a funnel where it's like, okay, maybe you want to do a newsletter, and then that newsletter, takes them to a welcome sequence where the call to action is to book a call, things like that, right? Because content is great for visibility, but content should also serve the purpose of feeding your downstream funnel when we think about it down the line, right? And then we get into measurement, right? And so, how do we make sure that the content that we're creating is actually performing really well? And so, this is where distribution, after we've distributed, we want to, measure. What are the metrics that we're measuring? Maybe when we want to measure and see how many people we're driving to our newsletter, how many people are actually signing up from our content, what content pieces are actually driving signups, right? Maybe we can measure it and see like, Are there specific content pieces that book a call? Can we attribute that call to a specific content piece, right? And so this is where measurement becomes so important, and having those automations and those agents execute that becomes more valuable over time. So, hopefully, I've shared a little bit with you about how I think, how I would approach this. But again, my name is Tina. I'm a Zapier Solutions partner. I am very, as you can see, heavily into automations, AI, and agents. And so, I would love the opportunity to chat and see if I can build this out for you. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. Bye.